I know most of you are probably like, what on earth is this whole Be Rich thing? I have no idea. This is something that we are a part of which several hundred churches across America are doing this. And it's really for us as a church to focus on being generous. And this is something that we hear a lot about. Let me ask you this. How many of you have been blessed by somebody's generosity? How many of you have been blessed by somebody's generosity? It might have been something they did for you. It might have been financially, whatever it is. They went out of their way to bless you. And we know what that feels like. That's humbling for us. It makes us feel like we owe them something, and yet, or that maybe you're the type that you're like, why did they do that? What do they want? Hopefully not, because generosity is something that is just somebody giving out of what they have to a person who didn't necessarily even ask for it. And that's a blessing to us. On the other side, some of you have been generous, if not all of us. I hope that in some way we served somebody, we helped somebody, we gave to somebody out of a heart of generosity. It was no strings attached. We just wanted to help somebody. We wanted to love them and provide for them. And in order to do that, it was important for us to have our eyes open, for us to be looking for those opportunities, for us to be looking for a need to be met, or something that we could be a part of. And that is really the heart of us this month with Be Rich. We want to challenge you with these three words that you just saw, that we are going to give, that we are going to serve, and that we're going to love. And we'll tell you more about that towards the end of this. This is all rooted in a couple of things. One, Jesus. Jesus was generous. Jesus was one of the most generous people, if not the most generous person to ever live, because he gave his very life for you and for I. That's pretty generous. For people that didn't even necessarily love him or ask him for it, he gave it anyway. Generosity was seen in his actions and how he treated people as he walked around on the earth. He ministered for 3 years, and you saw his generosity all the time. And that heart of generosity is really what we want in all of us. And not just in November, not just in December, but around the year, all the time. One of my favorite church historical figures is a guy, John Wesley. He was known for starting the Wesleyan movement as well as the Methodist Church that was part of that whole movement. And John Wesley had a philosophy for his life when it came to generosity. He was earning a lot of money. He was in high demand as a preacher. He was just this very blessed individual that a lot of people gave to. But he had a philosophy with what was given him. He said, if I leave behind me 10 pounds, he's English, 10 pounds, not this. I got plenty of 10 pounds there. If I leave behind me 10 pounds or $10, when he dies, you and all mankind can bear witness against me that I have lived and died a thief and a robber. He's saying this, if I die and I still have $10 in my pocket and I haven't given it away, I'm a robber. This was his heart. This was what he wanted. He wanted that all he had, all that had been given to him, he wanted to give away. And he lived his life this way. This is seen with Jesus. Think of this. Jesus and his generosity. If you know the story or a couple stories about Jesus, one of them was Zacchaeus. Zacchaeus was a guy who just wanted to see Jesus, and he was short. He was, vertically challenged, so he climbs up into a tree to see Jesus for himself with his own two eyes. And he goes up there, and Jesus, who has crowds around him, is walking along, looks up, sees Zacchaeus, and in that moment declares that he's going to spend the rest of his day with Zacchaeus, a guy he barely knew, but he knew his story because he was God. And he spends the rest of his day, instead of spending it with crowds. That wasn't the only time. Jesus oftentimes ignored crowds. And in one time in particular, he had crowds around him again. And a woman who had been suffering from bleeding for years, she's like, if I can just touch the hem of his robe, I'll be fine, and I'll slip off, and no one will know. I'll be healed. And so she reaches out, and she's healed, and she just slips off. She knows Jesus didn't see it, doesn't know anything about it, but Jesus knew. Jesus knew that she had touched his robe to be healed. The Bible says he felt power go out of him, healing power. And instead of just saying, whatever, let's pay attention to the crowds. Look at me, I got a crowd around me. No, he seeks her out. He had to have his eyes open. He looked for her. and he blessed her. How about this? The woman at the well, Jesus, he's in Samaria, a hated town, a hated country. The Jewish people did not like them. And he's sitting at a well, and a woman who was an outcast of her very own society comes walking along. Jesus, instead of doing what most other people would have done and ignoring her, or maybe even moving and get out of the way, was generous. He valued her. He spoke to her. He gave her instruction for life. And her life was radically changed, as well as the town that she lived in. Jesus allowed children to come to him. Now, he's a well-known teacher. There is so much buzz going on about Jesus. People are coming from far and near to see him. And yet he allows children to come sit on his lap, which was so unusual for somebody that popular back then, that he wanted to spend time with children. What is that all about? It was all about Jesus' generosity. Why was Jesus generous? Because he loved all of those people. He valued them, and he gave his time, his healing, and whatever he had, he used to give to them. He wanted to bless them. Time and time again, you see it over and over and over again. Now, this was not a sales pitch for Jesus. Wow, you know how I can build crowds around me? Maybe if I do some cool stuff for people, or maybe I do some good deeds, that's just going to bring more followers. We talked a couple weeks ago about the fact that Jesus oftentimes, in the height of his popularity, would say something difficult and lose the crowds. And he was okay with that. Jesus wasn't being generous because he thought it might bring more people to see him. No, he did it because that's who he was. He valued people, and he loved people, and he gave what he had. Now, you and I are called to do the same thing. You and I are called to be generous with our lives. Whether that means financially, whether that means serving, whatever that means, we are called to be generous. And one area that you see this in Scripture is out of 1 Timothy. Paul is writing someone he's been mentoring for years, a man named Timothy. Timothy is going off to be a pastor. And so when you read 1 Timothy, you're hearing Paul, this great apostle, this follower of Jesus, giving him instructions on, here's how you do a great job of being a pastor. Here's some instructions for you. And one of the things that he says, we see in 1 Timothy 6, verses 17 to 19. He says this, "Command those who are rich in this present world not to be arrogant, nor to put their hope in wealth, which is so uncertain, but to put their hope in God, who richly provides us with everything for our enjoyment." Before we go on, I want to stop there. Those who are rich in this present world, you may not think of yourself as rich, but if you earn $50,000 or more as a household a year, you are, by world standards, in the top 4% of the world for rich and for being rich and wealthy. Most of the world does not earn that kind of money. So for those of us who may not feel rich, and I understand that sometimes we have situations and circumstances that come our way that make things difficult, in light of the majority of the world, we are wealthy people here. And Paul says, hey, Timothy, instruct those who are rich in this present world, and not to be worried about their wealth and how they can make more and how they can just live their life that way. What's interesting about this is this: put your hope in God, who richly provides us with everything for our enjoyment. I want to highlight this because I am not here to condemn people who have been gifted with wealth. If that's you, awesome. You do not see Jesus call out rich people and smash them for being rich and tell them to get rid of everything. In fact, what he tends to go after is their love of money. I believe that material possessions, this verse says, God gave for your enjoyment. It's okay to every once in a while spend on yourself. The problem is when that has us, when it owns us, that we need this to be happy. So he goes on, he says this: command them, the rich people, to do good, to be rich in good deeds, and to be generous and willing to share. In this way, they will lay up treasure for themselves as a firm foundation for the coming age, so that they may take hold of the life that is truly life. Be rich in good deeds, to be generous and willing to share. Those who are rich in this current age, you may not feel rich. There are days I don't. My children need a lot, okay? There are days we do not feel rich at all. There are days when bills sideswipe you and take you, you thought you were doing well, and it just knocks you back. But even if you're not necessarily materially wealthy, you are wealthy with gifts and the ability to serve and with skills. And you have so much to give away and use to help other people. But we just don't often think about it. And so we are encouraging you this month to be rich, to be generous with all that you have for a reason. Because it says, this takes hold of the life that is truly life. You want to know what a fulfilling life is? A fulfilling life is a generous life. A life that gives, a life that is looking on how you can bless other people with what you have, and to not hold it all for yourself. You have skills and abilities that allow us to serve others. Now, Jesus also talked about this generosity concept and even how our serving him shows our generosity. And you see this in Matthew 5:16. Matthew 5:16, Jesus says, in the same way, let your light shine before others, that they may see your really good church service or your really cool church building and glorify your Father in heaven, right? No. They'll see your good deeds. Your good deeds. Your good deeds. The way that you serve the world around you, not just even Christians, not even just the people you like, the way that you are generous towards them is a form of evangelism, which is a fancy word, if you're not used to it, for sharing Christ with other people, showing them the life of Christ, your own deeds. We aren't doing good deeds so that we can earn some favor with God. That's futile. We can't. He's done all the work for us. But we do good deeds partly because of our generosity and partly because it reflects the love that we have for God. It's an amazing way to share Christ. I heard a story this past week of a church out of Dallas, Lake Point Church. We're not going to talk about their football team. Lake Point Church, had to get that response in there. Wow, okay, 3 people laughed. Wow. Lake Point Church did something really cool as an evangelistic thing, but out of generosity this past year. They decided that they were going to collect money just out of people being generous with what they could afford. And it's a larger church, obviously. They raised $2.6 million. Here's what they did with that $2.6 million. They didn't pour it back into themselves. No, they gave it away, and they gave it away to an organization that pays off medical debt for people in that area. With that $2.8 million, they were able to pay off accrued medical debt people could not pay for 2,400 people in their community. Do you think that might be something that says, why on earth did you do that? Well, let me tell you why. That is an evangelistic tool that you have. Acts chapter 2, I was thinking about this morning. Acts chapter 2, when it's talking about the early church and when the first church really was birthed, it said that they did all these great things and they cared for each other and they would meet needs within their body, but it says that they enjoyed the favor of the people. The community looked at them and said, wow, there is something about this thing called the church. I like what they're doing. Look at how they serve each other and look how they serve everyone around them, even us. What's that all about? This is an evangelistic tool as well as anything. And lastly, I give you this. It's not just targeted at people we like. It's targeted at all people. We have to keep our eyes open to be generous. In Acts 1:8, it says Jesus tells his disciples, one of his last series of words that he gives them before he ascends into heaven after his resurrection. He says this, you're going to receive power when the Holy Spirit comes on you, and you will be my witnesses. Where? To Jerusalem, Judea, and Samaria, and the ends of the earth. Jesus was saying this in Jerusalem, so he's saying, you're going to be my witnesses right here in town. But that's not all. You're also going to be in Judea, the state. You're going to be in Samaria, that place that none of you want to have anything to do with. You're going to be my witnesses there. And not just that, it's going to go even beyond that. The uttermost parts of the world. We can't just all focus here. It's a great thing that we focus here. We have to keep our eyes as to where God may use us, even around us, even in a larger city that we know as Hartford, which I will get to in a moment. This is why we're doing Be Rich. Today, we want to talk and focus on giving generously, and we're going to highlight a little bit of serving generously. What does this have to do with Hartford, and why did Dan just drop that in there? Well, let me tell you why. Over the last couple of months, the Glow team, myself, have been looking for a nonprofit that we could come alongside of, and without really even telling them, blessing them with our giving. I found one in Hartford, which is 20 minutes away from us. From this very spot, it's 20 minutes. And it's called Hartford Rescue Mission. You may not know anything about it, but I'm not going to tell you about it. I'm going to let the directors tell you about it. So go ahead and roll the video. I have had the opportunity to have a lot of interactions with the Woods, and what a really cool couple who just feel that God has put them there for such a time as this. They have big ambitions and big dreams of what they are going to be doing in Hartford. Right now, they are actually having to feed people out of a different church because this building that you saw that was given to them, 72,000 square feet of where their dream is and their vision is, they're not allowed to occupy it to give out food right now, and that's really the first step for them. Let me ask you this. How many of you were in Hartford this past week? How many of you were in Hartford this past month? Bigger question. How many of you went to a Yard Goats game this year? Okay, guess what? Hartford Rescue Mission is 1 mile north of Dunkin' Donuts Park. You have to go around it to get there. So this is not the uttermost parts of the world for some of us. This may be more Jerusalem. This may be more Judea to you. That we're getting an opportunity to help a nonprofit here and minister to them. So how are we helping today? We want to help Hartford Rescue Mission reach this goal that they have, and it's a big goal they have, to be able to turn this building over. You saw some of the donations of what they have had there for mattresses and beds and desks and all this stuff that's been donated to them. Their big, crazy dream is to see this turn into a place where the homeless can go, where they can get food, where they can get help, where they can work through a STEP program, that even they can mentor others and help them in their recovery and overcoming homelessness, and even get training and GEDs and so on, so that they can break the cycle of their life for the struggle with homelessness. It's a big, ambitious goal. And for us, we're going to seek to help them. As I said, they have no idea that we are going to give to them. But it's my heart and my encouragement for us as a church, first, to give generously, to be bold, and maybe stretch out of our comfort zone with this. We're going to do this in a couple ways, okay? In a moment, we're going to dismiss a little early, which may be a relief to some of you. You don't have to hear me keep talking, and I'm not offended by that. But Beth is going to come up and give some closing instructions with this. But we want to challenge everybody here to give $39.95 exactly. $39.95 or more. If you want to give more, some of you are blessed materially and you can give to that. We wanted to pick something that we felt everybody could pay. That's less than a cable bill. That's less than a Wi-Fi bill for a month. We want to challenge everybody to give $39.95. Now, there's a number of ways that you're going to see, and Beth will tell you about in a moment, of how you can do that, including even in our own lobby today. But we want to challenge you to give. And we want to bless this organization, Hartford Rescue Mission, with our giving and our generosity and seeing their mission go forward. And we just get to be a part to see how God uses that. That's going to be an awesome thing, because here's what I want to challenge you with. It's not about the dollar amount that we're going to give them. That's not what I'm concerned about. What I want from Hope Church is 100% participation. We want to see all of us stretch out of our comfort zone and, in a way, give generously from what we have to help a vision to change lives in Hartford come true. I hope you're up for that. I am, and I'm excited about it. In fact, I was so excited I gave last night just because I could. So I want to challenge you, $39.95, to do that this morning. Again, Beth will tell you in a few minutes on how you can do that. We also, in our campaign of generosity, and I'm just highlighting this, next week, we will not be having services here at Hope Church, not because of what I hear is a possible bit of snow coming, which I'm somewhat excited about, but the reason that we are not having church next Sunday here, don't show up at 9 or 11, is we want to challenge you to serve generously. We have a number of opportunities to serve within our community and the communities around us. And there is signups that you can look at in a minute out in the area just across from Guest Central. Take a look at some of those opportunities. There's about 120, 130 spots for people to serve. Yes, there's more of us here. If we do not have a spot for you, if they all fill up, or if you can't do it when we have some of these service opportunities, my challenge for you is find a nonprofit to serve with and let us know how you're serving and all the details of that. We want to encourage you with that. Or who is in your neighborhood and who is around you that could use some help? We want to challenge you that next Sunday morning, we don't show up to church and do church, but that we go out and we be the church and be generous with what we have and how we can bless those around us in our community. Because it's a way of sharing Christ and enjoying the favor of the people when they see that we genuinely care about everyone around us, not just who assembles here on Sundays. Let's choose to be rich in our good deeds. Let's choose to give generously this morning and begin to see lives changed. So in a minute, don't just walk out after I pray here in a second. Beth is going to give some instructions as to how you might be able to give there, and also just some encouragements with the serve thing. So let's have a word of prayer, and Beth will take it from me. Here we go. God, as we enter into this time of just trying to be like Jesus in our generosity, that we're looking beyond our circles, that we're looking around us and looking for opportunities. And Lord, what you have given us, we are looking to give to somebody else because you provide for us. You have given it to us, and we want to have a rich, generous life. Jesus, challenge all of us wherever we are. Lord, we want to make sure that we are faithful with what you have given. And we ask this in your name. Amen.